Right, we're off. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of the London Affiliate Conference, room 2. We're kicking off today with Ken Muir from iGaming Tracker. Ken's been in the industry a while now. I think he spent over 7 years at Sky, and then went on to become a casino consultant. And in 2 years, set up iGaming Tracker, which is a very interesting platform which provides all sorts of insights on suppliers and market share and everything else. He also writes for us exclusively every month as well, for our iGamingbusiness.com website as well, on sort of interesting trends and developments. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Ken, and Ken's going to give his presentation now. Over to you, Ken.
Hello. It's a bit loud. Yeah, hi. So, my name's Ken Muir, and today I'm going to talk about casino content. Okay, so rather than, I think most of the talks today will be SEO and getting traffic, because you're affiliates. I thought it'd be a good, a bit of a different angle to actually talk about the actual content on casino sites. Okay, so as Stephen says, I contribute every month to iGaming Business articles, and I've just basically summarised some of these articles, some of the data to show you, hopefully a few key insights. Okay, so casino content. So I'm sure some of you guys either work for operators or you're casino affiliates, and the whole point of online casinos is to have content for people to use this content. There's a variety of sites there. They all have various levels of content from different suppliers. Sometimes they have their own brand suppliers. And the content mix changes by site and country on a daily basis. And 1.8 billion, that's the Gambling Commission estimated revenue for online slots last year. So because of the figures involved, it's highly competitive. So it's going to be lots of pretty visualizations, by the way. So this basically represents the content mix by casino game supplier in 2017. So for this visualization, we looked at 90 casino sites in the UK. We monitored these sites every day and aggregated the data up to arrive at this figure. Okay, so you can see the big boys in the middle: Playtech, NetEnt, Microgaming, SG Interactive. By the way, Playtech includes Icon and Quickspin. SG Interactive are the brands of Bally and Williams, etc. What's interesting is if you did this a few years ago, the key players would still be there. They probably would have had a larger market share. But you can see dozens of satellite games developers. Okay, so since we've been looking at the casino market over the last 2 years, we've seen quite a change in the mix and the competitiveness of casino content. Okay, so again, this is another visualization which looks at not the casino content of all the sites aggregated, but just looking at 2 casinos. So I just chose a popular sports book, Betfair, and Leo Vegas, a popular, dedicated casino. And as you can see, the content, this is looking at the desktop main page, the landing page, and it's looking at every day in 2017. And you can see that there's a variety of casino suppliers on each site, but the casino suppliers do change by casino. So you can see with Betfair, you've got Caetano, which is their own branded software developer. Blueprint, Red Tiger, are quite a new entrant, and Leo Vegas are probably more focused on the mature brands of NetEnt and IGT. Okay, so as you can see, these pages are very competitive, and the casino, I don't know how many of you are at ICE over the last 2 or 3 days, but you can see the stands and just how much time and effort they put in to try and get their casino content front of mind to the operators. So pages are very competitive. So this is Unibet, and it's got NetEnt's latest release, Universal Monsters, The Phantom's Curse. Just like any other retail site, if you're top of the site, you're going to make more revenue than if you're at the bottom of the site. So all these casino suppliers are obsessed with getting their content as high as possible and as front of mind as possible. So how do we do that? So different sites have different policies where they place content, but we have seen some trends, okay? So you'll see on quite a few of these sites, you've got a section of popular games, which are usually algorithms where it's based on transactions, so what actually customers are playing. And then you've got new games, okay? Most sites heavily focus on the new games, okay? These new games have a very short shelf life. There's only, 2 or 3 games which actually have a long lifetime. So just going back to a site, so if you imagine this site is like a grid of games, okay, what we do at iGaming Tracker is we just basically track the grid every day for about 1,300 casino pages. So we can get visualizations like this and have a look at what's going on. So this is a representation of a Sky Vegas desktop page. And you've got like a hero game in position 1. So it's actually 4 times the size of all the other games. And what we did here is we just looked at the content on one day. So it was the 26th of January. It was just a normal, typical day in the world of Sky Vegas. We just looked at the new games and the old games, okay? So the more green the game, the newer the game, and the more red the game, the older the game. And you can see quite plainly that, they push the new games at the top, trying to get new, customers to use that content. Okay, so there's a lot of focus on new games. I think if you went to ICE over the last 2 or 3 days, you would have seen quite a lot of, expensive stands pushing new game launches. This was actually from last year, the microgaming stand. So their big game release this time last year was The Phantom of the Opera. So they had, opera singers there, quite a big show, very impressive. So I thought it'd be interesting just to understand and have a look at this game and see how it actually performed on online casinos over time. So this is an analysis that we did of The Phantom of the Opera. Okay, so we looked at all the sites that we were tracking. It was 50 sites. And we looked at the top 10 positions of the main landing pages. And you can see basically what the axis on the left is aggregated days. So that's basically how many days of all the 50 sites this game was on the main landing page. And you can see at the start with game launches, the average position is number 4, so it's always above the fold. It launched on 52 sites, which is very impressive. Some sites take longer than others to actually load the content. People have their own sprints and so on, and usually after about 2 weeks, the game's fully launched. So you can see it peaked here at 54 sites. Again, the average position was high. And then after about week 3, it started to go down, and it steeply declines after about 4 or 5 weeks. And that's the decline is the sites which had it not getting the revenue, and it goes down in the order based on either manually or through the algorithms. it goes from 37 sites having the game in the, on the main page, and then after about 6 weeks, well, say 8 weeks, it goes to 9 sites where the game is on. Okay, so this is, I don't know if you guys work for operators or affiliates, but if any of you have got any experience in customer analysis for operators, you'll see lifetime value graphs exactly like this for casino customers. So, is this game typical? I singled out this game because there was a big launch in ICE last year. It isn't. So we had a look at one of Microgaming's competitors, NetEnt. And there's a lot going on in this graph. But basically what we've done is from March, we looked at 66 sites, casino sites, which have NetEnt content. And we mapped, just like the previous graph, the aggregated days in the top positions. And we just added all the big game launches that NetEnt provide. Okay, so in March, we have Jungle Spirit. And again, it has the same pattern as Phantom of the Opera. So it launches, gets high, lots of sites have it, and then after about 2 or 3 weeks, it starts to decline. About a month later, it basically goes. But then they release Copycats, and that goes up, but not as much as Jungle Spirit, maybe because of the summer. And then they have another launch, Butterfly Stacks, Emoji Planet, The Legend of Shangri-La, Planet of the Apes, Finn and the Swirly Spin, which is still live on most sites now. And you can see that the pattern is broadly the same. It launches, it has high exposure. After about 2 or 3 weeks, it starts to churn, starts to decline. So why are they doing this? Well, the main reason is they're hoping that one of these game launches will actually stick. Okay, so you can see the peaks of each game. The red line at the top is NetEnt's main game, Starburst. Okay, so that was launched years ago. In the UK, if you go to any UK casino site, it's usually at the top. So they're launching these games, and they're not only are they doing it to add content and just basically have some noise to say we've got a new game and getting more revenue, but they're trying to launch a game which is going to stick, like Starburst. There is another game by NetEnt, Gonzo's Quest, which is similar to Starburst, but not quite as successful. By the way, this isn't looking at revenue. This is just looking at the positions of the games on the sites, okay? But it's a very good indicator, and there's a large correlation between the position and the revenue. Okay. So we've seen there's a lot of competition. What we found just by looking at the data, so to give you an example, in 2017, we had about 48 million data points of casino placements over sites. So there's a lot of data to crunch the numbers on. What we found was the old established brands are being challenged by new game producers, okay? And you can see that on the floor in ICE as well. So you've got the old guard of NetEnt, Playtech, SG Interactive, Play and Go, IGT, Microgaming. What we found is there's quite a few smaller development houses which are making big impacts, particularly so at the moment for me, Red Tiger and Big Time Gaming. And Yggdrasil as well, we've got a big stand there. So maybe it's all in the branding throughout. I've just noticed they're all red. So there you go. So the next slide, what we've done is we're just looking at suppliers. So rather than looking at the games, we're looking at the supplier share on these sites. So for this, I was quite careful not to include sites where there may be NetEnt but not Red Tiger content. So we've got the sites that we were tracking in the UK here at the bottom. Okay, and we were looking at the main landing pages, desktop, top 20 locations. Now, this isn't showing revenue. This is just showing content mix on sites. So, you know, if you're an investor in NetEnt, don't panic. The revenue's not going down. Bear in mind that NetEnt have 2 or 3 of the top games in Starburst and Gonzo's Quest. But you can see some interesting patterns. So you can see that NetEnt is actually declining in its share, because NetEnt's policy is, you know, their content isn't ring-fenced like Playtech. It's on sites, pages, where other games developers can add their content. And you can see like Red Tiger, who had a stand at ICE, you know, are increasing. Big Time Gaming have got, you know, a couple of very successful games at the moment. And Pragmatic Player are increasing. And this is the UK. I think that there will be much more if we were looking in European markets. So I think the message to take from this is competition's good, and there's a lot more competition in the casino market now. And there's, I think, to use the jargon, there's a lot of disruptors, so the content's good, and that's ultimately good for the consumers. We have noticed another trend as well. So you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the north, and this is a photograph of Morrison's. And we've got cereals and own brand cereals, so I'm a fruit and fibre man. And I think what I wanted to display in this slide is with casinos, they are producing their own branded games as well. Okay, so back to an example of Sky Vegas. I could have used Paddy Power or Betfair or Coral. You know, there's plenty of own branded content on casino sites. So here you can see Sky Vegas has some, you know, some big games which are available on lots of sites, but they also have a policy of having their own games developer, Core Gaming, which they acquired a couple of years ago. To basically beef up the content, so it's obviously better value for them. So if you just picture this site and, you know, the grid of the games, and this is the visualization of the Sky Vegas page. And what I did was basically looked at the page, the start of the year, 1st of January, 1st of July, and 1st of January. So, you know, three days spaced over a year. And although the games change, the actual content mix doesn't, okay? So the colors denote the supplier. So I think you can guess the color of their own branded games. It's red, okay? So that's Core Gaming content. And you can see that the mix slightly increases, but what we found over the year, the mix remains about 40%. You can also see a supplier who on row 5 of our visualization here doesn't change, so maybe they've got some kind of deal with Sky. Who knows? So it's quite interesting to see that although there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of time and effort of launching these casino games, that just like any other business, they are trying to get their own branded games because it's a lot cheaper for them. Okay, so hope those are quite interesting for you. There's some insights into the actual content mix. What we've also found doing work for clients is that sometimes these games don't actually work. Okay, so you know, this isn't a problem with William Hill. I was just on William Hill, so I did a screenshot. So it's not. Do games work? What we found is not all the time. When we do game tests, and we're talking like hundreds and thousands of game tests. But less than, it's about 1 to 2% of the game launches actually fail. Okay, and there's a variety of reasons for that. Sometimes it's the actual game themselves. It's it's the platform. Sometimes it's the site. So what we did there, this was an article we did for iGaming Business, and we looked at a variety of games. And what we tried to do was look at games over several suppliers and each game over several sites. And the axis is on the left is the file size of a game. Okay, so they range from about 2 meg right up to about 25 meg. And the axis on the right is the number of seconds it took to launch that game on an uncached browser. Now, for each test, we did at least 200 tests to make sure it was, we got a good sample. And there was quite some quite interesting insights into this data. Also, before I go on about the data, we throttled the tests. So we just used the UK broadband average because that obviously has an effect on how these games launch. And what we found was we've got NetEnt games, red games, all seem to be small file size. And because we're a small file size, their game loading time was very, very short. Some of the new game suppliers, like Yggdrasil, obviously have a different strategy. So their content required a much higher, bigger file size, so obviously it was much richer gaming experience. But the sacrifice to that is the game loading time is a lot bigger. Okay, and then you've got suppliers in the middle. So I think when you look at the casino sites and you see all of these games, it's not necessarily correct to say that these launch times are all going to be the same. There's some inconsistent service levels. Okay, so to give you an example of inconsistent service levels, so we've got 2 games here, and each dot represents a game test. Okay, and we did the game test as an uncached browser and then a cached browser because obviously once it's cached, it's a lot quicker. And you'll remember Starburst here. So it's a small file size and it's quite a quick load time. And you can see the game tests in more detail. The colors denote the actual casino site they were tested on. And you can see that there's, apart from 1 or 2 William Hill, they're all tight. They always work. And you compare that to another very popular game, Rainbow Riches Pick and Mix, which is an SG Interactive game. And the file size is much, much larger. And because of that, the loading times are much more erratic. And you can see that some of the sites have real problems dealing with that file size. Okay, so I think the insight here is basically, there's a lot of money being spent, a lot of time and effort with you guys getting the traffic to the sites, a lot of time and effort on the marketing of the sites, but there's still work to do for actually servicing the game content. Okay, so that's it for me. I think I used to work in sports affiliates, so I was trying to work out what would you guys, what kind of insight would you find useful? I think if there was 4 points, number 1 would be sites have different content strategies. I'm even talked about the Playtech tabs, where it's exclusive content just by Playtech. Content's refreshed constantly, but it's predictive. So there might be a new game launch, but we all know it's going to be, next month is going to be a NetEnt game launch, and the month after, and the month after. These game suppliers are, their main aim in life is to release games on a regular basis and just hope that one of them's going to stick, and they're going to have a Rainbow Riches or a Starburst or Book of Dead, which is going to, is going to make them successful. And different casino sites have different service levels. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Do we have any questions from the audience at all for Ken on any of this? To cover a hell of a lot of ground there. So I think what I'd like to look at is, obviously you mentioned the up-and-coming suppliers. I mean, there's always an argument that the space is saturated, right? But there are these new guys coming in. I mean, but they're all very distinct strategies, aren't they? I mean, what would you single out as from the new sort of emerging guides, such as Red Tiger and Blueprint and everything else? What's their USP? I mean, do you have any insights on what's enabled these particular ones to come through in the last year or so?
Yeah.
Because it's always talking about being saturated, too competitive, but yeah.
Yeah, so I've been, just by looking at the data, so I'm not actually involved with the operators, and I'm not playing the games. We're just looking at the data, and what's quite interesting is there are some companies who are. It seems that the more interested in the quality rather than the quantity of games. Okay, so I think, for example, Red Tiger, Elk Studios, they seem to be emulating the NetEnt pattern of quality games. There are some games developers who are focusing on specific segments. So Icon, who were acquired by Playtech last year, a good example. Blueprint seems to be very successful in the sports betting sites in the UK. And also regionally, so in different countries, there seems to be quite a lot of disruption. So, for instance, Skywind, who are a big Asian gaming supplier, have just started launching in Europe. So.
Okay, I think it's your last chance to ask any questions openly, but I'm sure he'll hang around at the end if you want to ask him anything sort of face to face. Thanks very much, Ken. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.